Shay Scott, you're a bastard, sir. You're a bastard. But it doesn't necessarily mean that what you said on this one is not. It's not completely wrong. This is one of the toughest videos that I think I've had to do, which means that my biases are eating me alive in doing this particular video and covering this particular topic. But this question has been asserting itself, and this question needs to be answered. I've always said when coming up with Tulsi Gabbard that I like her foreign policy, even though I don't fully know her domestic policy, and I reserve my opinion on her with a subsequent check on her domestic policies. Here's the thing. It's not so much her domestic policies that's coming up as a question here. The question becomes on her perspective or whether or not Tulsi Gabbard is homophobic. This, to some degree, is a do you beat your wife question. And I understand that's somewhat of a do you beat your wife question. But whether it's a do you beat your wife question, is there a reality to this? And unfortunately, the reality to this is, yes, there's a reality to it, even though it's slightly complicated. And I know me saying it's slightly complicated is trying to create a magical door, but no, I really mean it's slightly complicated. So let me explain what I mean. And the overarching question that asserts itself in having analysis or having a dialogue on this particular point is, does that disqualify you from a presidential run if it in fact is shown that there are views and there are viewpoints that may take you into this range of what would be considered homophobic? This is toxic from the standpoint of running on the left. But is there a caveat? And is there a little bit of gray area in regards to this particular conversation? I find this conversation interesting, while at the same token difficult to have. I find it difficult to have because I like Tulsi Gabbard. If I'm just being bluntly honest, I like her. That said, whether I like her or not versus this question is a different thing. So let's get into it. The overarching question. Tulsi Gabbard has had points in her past where she has, let's say, evolved on this issue of homosexuality. Now, I don't necessarily want to hear a lesson from Hillary supporters on this, seeing that Hillary Clinton didn't quote-unquote evolve on gay marriage until 2015. So they are willing to give her a pass while at the same token being overtly, aggressively against Tulsi Gabbard on this. But fair enough. These are two different things. So let's have a conversation about the Tulsi Gabbard one. It is very true that Tulsi Gabbard has evolved on this issue, or had to evolve on this issue. And not just true, though. A lot of Democrats have had to evolve on this issue. The issue here, when I read through this stuff, is that she was aggressively homophobic. Like, this wasn't, I'm not for gay marriage. This was a certain aggressiveness associated with her being what you could say against the gay community. Let's just be honest about it. So, this segment, and I have multiple articles on this, and these articles are pretty straightforward. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard even talked about this herself. So first, let's deal with where is it? Where's my display? Give me 1 second, guys. There we are. All right, here we are. So this is a Rolling Stones article. Rolling Stones is not, one way or the other. They tend to be pretty straightforward on this stuff. In 2000, she lashed out at gay rights activists who objected to Gabbard's mother's bid to join the school board, saying that the activists feared that her mother would, quote-unquote, not allow them to force the use down the throats of the children in our schools. In 2004, while serving on the state legislature, she led the fight against the bill that would have legalized civil unions for same-sex couples. To try and act as if there is a difference between civil unions and same-sex marriage is dishonest, cowardly, and extremely disrespectful to the people of Hawaii, she said. As Democrats, we should represent the views of the people, not a small number of homosexual extremists. That is such a bizarre thing, homosexual extremists. She acts as if they are trying to force you to watch two men have sex. That's not, in fact, that term is extreme. Regarding a resolution that would have addressed anti-gay bullying, Gabbard delivered what the New Yorker describes as a long, fierce speech railing against the prospect of children being taught that homosexuality is normal and natural. Now, to be fair to her, her dad was this way. And, you grew up in a childhood home where you have a dad who's a right-winger who has some pretty, vicious views towards homosexuality, and she appropriates those views. By the same token, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person doesn't or can't evolve from those views. That just means that at some point in the past, the person had those particular viewpoints. People change and people evolve. Now, in her case, she's answered this. She says, first, let me say that I regret the positions I took in the past and the things that I said. She wrote in a statement to CNN responding to the story. I'm grateful for those in the LGBTQ community who have shared their aloha with me through the personal journey. Over the past 6 years in Congress, I've been fortunate and have the opportunity to work with passing legislation to ensure equal rights and protections to the LGBTQ plus Equality Act, the repeal of DOMA, the Restore Honor and Service Members Act, the Employment of Non-Discrimination Act, the Safe Schools Improvement Act, and the Equality for All Resolution. Much work remains to ensure the equality and civil rights protection for LGBTQ Americans. If elected president, I will continue to fight for equal rights for all. Now, so these are two things. Yes, she's harbored certain, you can say raucous is the wrong word for it, obnoxious viewpoints from the standpoint of the homosexuality thing. People evolve. Even people who's had somewhat of a, let's say, vicious perspective towards or on this particular issue. But this gets to another point. It's one thing to evolve on the issue, but have you evolved on the issue? Meaning, it's two perspectives. There's a perspective of the individual from what they want to accomplish in that office and whether that they would do anything that would adversely affect this particular constituency in the office. And there's a secondary point to what the person thinks. Tulsi Gabbard at this point is getting hit towards what she thinks, not necessarily what she will do, want to do, or may do in objective reality, because what she's done in objective reality has gone against the statements that she's made in the past. I hope that's, I'm trying to make that point. And I know it sounds like I'm dancing on that head over a pin, and to some degree maybe I am. But she's repudiated her past statements to a point. When Tulsi Gabbard was asked about whether or not she still maintained those past statements, the answer to that is, again, slightly complicated. It sounds that her previous perspective on this, from the individual standpoint, hasn't changed in the sense of what she believes is right and wrong. What she has changed is whether or not she believes that what she wants should be affected on the entirety of the population. There's a difference in those things. So, right here at this point, about 10 years ago, Gabbard violated some of the tenets of how you look popular as a Democratic with imminent endorsement in the boot. She was neither pro-choice nor pro-marriage, and in fact fell in line with erstwhile Republican father. She's definitely distanced herself on this. Like the stuff that I just read, she's distanced herself with in regards to the policies that she's gone out of her way to either co-sponsor or work with that are clearly, dramatically pro-LGBTQ. Right here. So when somebody brought this up to her, this was in 2014, I believe. The thing that I said ages ago, meaning, because she said this all the way back in 2004. We're talking about something that's like, what, 12, 14 years ago. The thing that I said ages ago, I said, honestly, I have to go back and look, she says. After repeated follow-ups, the Congresswoman replies with a note about her sponsorship, essentially saying, look, I supported all of these things. And if you want to say anything about what I said back then, I regret what I said back then. And in some degree of trying to make up for it and to show that I'm clear in what I want to accomplish on this issue, here are all the things I supported. So, but right here. Fittingly for a narrative, though, the explanation for her change ideology feints us back to familiar territory with the military. She says, in the days of the Middle East that taught her the dangers of a theocratic government imposing our will on the people, she tells me that no, her personal views haven't changed, but she doesn't figure it's her job to do as the Iraqis did and force their own beliefs on others. There's another article that I'm adding here, going back to this idea of whether or not her perspective on this stuff has changed. Her point of view is no. I still look at this stuff as the way I've looked at this stuff, but it is not my responsibility to impose what I believe, or my, let's say, religious beliefs on other people in this. And my experience in the military has gone about influencing that behavior and that perspective. This is an interesting thing because even in this, she's being honest. Like, I like her as a candidate. Even in this, she's being honest. It will be easy to just say, yes, I've changed. My point of view has changed. Everything else has changed. I've evolved on this issue. It is more honest to say that, look, I have certain belief systems, and those belief systems are still intact. However, it is not my responsibility to put my belief systems on the rest of the population. She goes into an article herself where she talks about her experiences in the Middle East, changing her perspective on this. My experiences in the Middle East eventually led me to reevaluate my views regarding government's role in personal lives and decision. Slowly, I began to realize that the positions I held previously regarding the issues of choice and gay marriage were rooted in the same premise held by those in power in the oppressive Middle Eastern regimes that I saw, that it is government's role to define and enforce our personal normality. The next year was full of changes, challenges, and soul-searching as my long-held views were challenged by my newfound recognition of the absolute importance of keeping church and state separate. I realized that whether or not I would choose to have an abortion ought to have no bearing on what another woman's ability to do so. And government has absolutely no business telling us whether or not we can do an intensely personal situation. I realizing that a constitutional amendment defining marriage, even the one that I and most Hawaiian voters had supported, was an anathema to the personal freedom that we enjoyed in America, and so my positions evolved. It wasn't because she was running in a presidential election like Hillary Clinton. Her positions evolved just from the natural course of being a human being and saying, it is not my responsibility or not my role to try to influence or put my religious beliefs into the governmental system itself. Those things are separate. And within the party structure and within the political space, she has done one thing after the next to support the LGBTQ community. So if you want to hit her on this in the sense of, yes, these were her past thoughts, but simultaneously the things that she's done in that office has been full-throated support of that particular community. Now, the question becomes, is she homophobic? The answer to some degree is somewhat gray. I mean, is homophobic what you think or is homophobic what you do? And the fact of the matter is that everything that you've supported and everything that you've done up to this point has been to support the LGBTQ community. How can you hit her with the slur that she's homophobic? Yes, she's held certain viewpoints, and those viewpoints are difficult to read. And whether or not I think they're over the line or not is going to create somewhat of a difficulty in her running for office. That said, whether she's homophobic is somewhat of a difficult thing to pull off because it's hard to know what she is at this point. But it's clear that she's evolved on this particular issue. The second point to this is whether or not you believe she's homophobic or not, what has she done? Meaning, does what she say match up against what she's done? She's saying that she's evolved on this issue. And in her saying she's evolved on this issue and her viewpoints, essentially, this is what I've done since being in Congress to demonstrate that I've evolved on this issue. If you're going to hit me with this, you should hit me based on my actions, not necessarily the things that I said 14 years ago. Whether or not you accept that is going to be up to the individual itself. This gets into this thing of doesn't matter in objective reality. If a person says something prior, there is ideas that this person is harboring certain thoughts that you don't particularly like, which makes a certain distrustful situation. I look at this and I try to think of this from the standpoint of African Americans, or even from the standpoint of abortion. If a person had a particular perspective on abortion or on African American rights, let's say the person says something that was blisteringly racist, and the person says, look, I've evolved on this issue. I am no longer that person that said those things. And everything else, for the most part, is true, meaning the economic stuff, the military stuff, all that stuff is true. Is that enough for me to jump over the hedge and say, okay, fair enough. I am okay with this person running for office and this person gets my support? I ask the question in that way because I try to make it directly personal in the same way that somebody who's, let's say, gay may make this relatively personal. This belief that this person is harboring certain thoughts that I don't particularly like, and even though they're saying the stuff now, that deep down they look at me with a particular, that's a tough one. That's a tough one, and I don't know the answer to that question, if I'm being completely honest. But I understand someone who may be gay who looks at this and says, I don't trust her. She's had issues where she's been completely against my community. Her quote-unquote evolution on this, I don't necessarily trust the evolution, is somewhat of a natural process. I understand. As for whether she's currently homophobic, that is somewhat unclear, even though the previous statements are rough to listen to. The overarching question to this is whether or not this is enough for the person who's dealing with this. Meaning, yes, she said things in the past, but yes, she's gone and distanced herself dramatically from the things that she said in the past, while simultaneously being honest and saying, I have certain beliefs, but those beliefs should not be reflected on the wider community. Whether that's enough is different, person to person. This is the tough one. I have mixed feelings on this. Like, what you do in objective reality matters. It matters. Now, I say that to say, do I believe that in any measure, Tulsi Gabbard is going to do anything that adversely affects LGBTQ community, or for that matter, goes out against the LGBTQ community? The answer is no. Nothing that she's done up until the point of her political, especially in the federal level, has been against this community. And in fact, she has supported this community all the way. So for me, there is no negative on this. Her previous behavior is gross, but her current behavior, particularly with regards to this community, has been entirely supportive. And there is nothing that any other Democratic candidate is going to do that is going to be further to the left of her on this issue. The issue that people have here is somewhat of a thought crime. We believe that she may potentially harbor negative thoughts, even though what she's doing in objective reality goes against those particular thoughts. I want to move the ball forward. And I don't believe that there is any reason to believe that Tulsi Gabbard is going to do anything against the LGBTQ community, seeing that everything she's done up to this point has been entirely supportive of the community. Yes, again, she said certain things in the past. But that's a different thing than, is she going to do something negative on that issue? And the answer to that is no. Not only is she not going to do anything negative on the issue, up to this point she supported one cause after the next on this particular issue. If you ask her to sit down and watch two men get it on and say, I think you have negative feelings about these two men getting it on, fair enough. And if that's your standard, where you're like, okay, I can't support her because I think she has negative thoughts, fair enough. Fair enough. It's possible that she does. But objective reality is different than what the thing that you're harboring from the standpoint of thoughts. This is not disqualifying for me. Call me an asshole. Call me okay of being okay for a particular one. But this is not disqualifying for me. It's not disqualifying. Piano Man, people grow and learn and change, yeah. Richard Head, dude, that's not fair. Okay, what's not fair? You have to go at me about it. I think only married gay folks should own guns. What? She voted 13 different pro-LGBT bills. Yes, she has. Like, yeah, she has. You can't say if someone doesn't want to watch news. I'm being over the top. You know what I mean. My point is this. She's being dinged for somewhat of a thought crime. It's one thing if she didn't support policies and bills that was pro-gay community. But she has. There are things that she said in the past, and she's evolved on those issues. And, my standard is, what are you doing in objective reality? And do I believe you're going to do anything negative on a particular issue in objective reality? And the answer is no. The answer is No. But again, I understand if you're part of that community and you're asking the question, can I trust her? The secondary question, though, is trust her to do what? What do you think she's going to do in that office that is going to be different than any other Democratic candidate that's going to be in that office? And do you honestly believe she is going to be somehow anti-gay when she gets in that office, when she hasn't been that way during the entire time she's been in politics? She still gets my support. So, Patrick Scapati, actions, not words, are what matters. Yes, Patrick. Tommy Teff Bayless. Her honesty is appreciated, but her honesty makes her a truthful person, not a good candidate. If she feels someone is less than or something is wrong with them due to being gay, that's not good. I agree with you that that's not good. But it's a standard, really, somewhat of a thought issue. Meaning, if you agree with me that everything that she's done from the standpoint of policy has been pro-LGBTQ, and if you agree with, and that's true, by the way, and if you agree with me that she's evolved on this particular issue and she's being honest with you in regards to her evolution on this issue, then what's the issue? Is the issue just she harbors certain thoughts? That you believe she harbors certain thoughts? And look, that's, again, I understand that being an issue for individuals who may say, okay, I don't know, I want a true believer. I guess what I'm getting at is, what do you think that she is going to do different in that office than any other candidate that's running in the Democratic Party? Particularly if everything that she's done in her office has been pro and supportive of the gay community. That's what I'm asking.